Behind the golden gates of Kensington Palace, where protocol usually reigns supreme and every word is carefully measured, something unexpected happened during the 2023 Christmas season. Prince William, the future King of England, made a simple joke that would reveal the true heart of the modern monarchy and show the world a side of royal life they had never seen before. It was a moment that began with laughter around a Christmas tree, but ended up transforming how millions of people viewed the British royal family. This is the true story of how one festive comparison between Kate Middleton and a Christmas tree became a symbol of authenticity, love, and the human side of royalty that the world desperately needed to see. What started as an intimate family moment would soon ripple across social media, touch the hearts of people worldwide, and prove that sometimes the most powerful royal moments happen not during grand ceremonies, but in the quiet, genuine exchanges between a husband and wife who just happened to wear crowns. The December wind swept across the grounds of Kensington Palace, carrying with it the promise of another royal Christmas that would be scrutinized by millions around the world. Inside the warmly lit reception hall, Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood beside a magnificent 20-foot Norwegian spruce, its branches heavy with centuries-old royal ornaments and twinkling lights that cast dancing shadows across her emerald green dress. She had chosen the outfit carefully for the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony, a tradition that brought together palace staff, local dignitaries, and selected members of the public. The deep green velvet gown complemented the festive setting perfectly, its elegant silhouette enhanced by the warm glow of the tree lights. Catherine moved gracefully among the guests, her practiced smile genuine as she listened to stories from elderly visitors about their own Christmas traditions and posed for photographs with excited children who could barely contain their joy at meeting a real princess. Prince William watched from across the room, taking a moment to appreciate not just how beautiful his wife looked, but how naturally she connected with people from all walks of life. After more than a decade of marriage, he still found himself marveling at her ability to make everyone feel special, to remember personal details about people she had met only briefly, and to bring warmth and authenticity to every royal engagement. The ceremony itself had gone smoothly, with Catherine officially lighting the tree while a children's choir sang traditional carols. The palace photographer had captured the official moments, but it was afterward, during the informal reception, that the magic truly happened. William had been chatting with Lord Lieutenant when he noticed his wife standing next to the tree, laughing at something one of the palace gardeners had said. In that moment, something about the scene struck him as both beautiful and amusing. Catherine, in her flowing green dress, stood so naturally beside the evergreen tree that for a split second, the two seemed to blend together in perfect harmony. The lights from the tree caught the subtle sparkle in her dress fabric, and her genuine laughter lit up her face in a way that reminded him why he had fallen in love with her all those years ago at university. Without thinking, William excused himself from his conversation and walked over to his wife. The gardener, recognizing the approach of the Prince of Wales, bowed respectfully and stepped aside, but William gestured for him to stay, understanding that Catherine had been enjoying their conversation about sustainable gardening practices at the palace. "You know," William said, his eyes twinkling with mischief as he looked between his wife and the Christmas tree. From across the room, "I honestly couldn't tell where the Christmas tree ended and Kate began." The comment caught Catherine completely off guard. She turned to look at him with raised eyebrows, her mouth slightly open in surprise, before breaking into the kind of uninhibited laughter that rarely emerged during public engagements. It was the laugh William remembered from their dating days, when she would double over at his terrible jokes and tease him mercilessly about his receding hairline. "Are you calling me a Christmas tree?" she asked, still giggling as she looked down at her green dress, and then back at the towering spruce beside her. "If I am, you're definitely the most beautiful Christmas tree I've ever seen," William replied, his own laughter joining hers. Tall, elegant, perfectly decorated, and absolutely impossible to ignore. The gardener, initially uncertain whether he should laugh at a royal joke, found himself chuckling along as the warmth of the moment became infectious. Other guests nearby began to notice the exchange, their formal postures relaxing as they witnessed this genuine interaction between the future king and queen. Catherine playfully swatted her husband's arm. William Arthur Philip Lewis Windsor, did you just compare your wife to garden foliage in front of witnesses? I most certainly did, he replied with mock formality, using her full name in return. Catherine Elizabeth Middleton Windsor, you are hereby officially designated as the most magnificent Christmas tree in all of England. The use of their full names, delivered with theatrical royal pompousness, sent them both into fresh fits of laughter. It was a callback to their university days when they would joke about the absurd formality of royal life that William would one day inherit. Around them, the atmosphere of the entire reception began to shift. Palace staff, usually maintaining perfect professional composure, found themselves smiling more freely. Guests who had arrived feeling nervous about meeting royalty began to relax, sensing that this was a family that, despite their titles and positions, shared the same kind of playful banter that happened in homes across Britain. Lady Susan Hussey, one of the Queen's former ladies-in-waiting and a family friend, approached the couple with a knowing smile. At 84 years old, she had witnessed decades of royal interactions and understood better than most how rare it was to see such genuine spontaneity during official events. "Your Royal Highnesses," she said with a slight curtsy, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "I do hope someone was taking photographs of this moment. The people would love to see their future monarchs enjoying themselves so thoroughly." William and Catherine exchanged glances, suddenly remembering that they were indeed at an official royal engagement, surrounded by guests and staff. For a few minutes, they had simply been a married couple sharing a joke, forgetting entirely about protocol and public image. "Perhaps we should maintain some semblance of royal dignity," Catherine whispered to her husband, though her smile remained radiant. "Perhaps we should," William agreed, but made no effort to compose his expression into anything more serious. "Though I stand by my comparison. You do make a lovely Christmas tree." The photographer, who had indeed been discreetly capturing moments throughout the evening, had managed to photograph the entire exchange. Later, when reviewing the images, he would realize he had documented something special. Not just another royal engagement, but a glimpse into the genuine affection and playfulness that existed between the Prince and Princess of Wales. As the reception continued, word of the Christmas tree comment began to spread among the guests. By the time everyone was saying their goodbyes, the story had taken on a life of its own, with each retelling adding new details about the princess's laughter or the prince's theatrical delivery. The children who had attended the event left talking excitedly about how the prince and princess had joked with each other just like their own parents did. The elderly guests found themselves charmed by the reminder that royalty, despite all the pomp and ceremony, were fundamentally a family that shared inside jokes and playful moments. Caroline Jenkins, a local headmistress who had been invited to represent her school charity work, later told her husband, "You know, I've met the royals at several events over the years, and they're always lovely, but tonight felt different. Tonight, they felt real." That sentiment would prove prophetic. The Christmas tree joke, simple as it was, represented something that the British public had been longing for without even realizing it: authentic moments from their royal family. In an era of increasing scrutiny and criticism of the monarchy, this glimpse of genuine warmth and humor would resonate far beyond the walls of Kensington Palace. As William and Catherine said their final goodbyes to guests and made their way back to their private quarters, they had no idea that their spontaneous moment of marital playfulness would soon become a symbol of everything people hoped the modern monarchy could be. They simply knew they had enjoyed themselves thoroughly and that, for once, a royal engagement had felt more like a family celebration than a duty. The Christmas tree stood in the reception hall, its lights twinkling peacefully as palace staff began the quiet work of clearing up after the evening's event. In a few hours, it would be decorated with additional ornaments brought by the children who would visit the next day. But, for now, it stood as a silent witness to a moment that would soon touch hearts around the world and remind everyone that sometimes the most powerful royal moments happen when protocol takes a back seat to simple human joy. The next morning dawned crisp and clear over London, with frost covering the palace gardens in a delicate silver blanket that sparkled in the early sunlight. Inside Kensington Palace, Catherine was having her morning tea while reviewing the schedule for the day when her private secretary, Hannah Cockburn, knocked gently on the door of the breakfast room. "Your Royal Highness," Hannah said as she entered, carrying a stack of newspapers and her ever-present tablet. "I thought you might want to see this morning's coverage of last night's tree lighting ceremony." Catherine looked up from her cup of Earl Grey, immediately noticing the barely suppressed smile on her secretary's face. After working together for several years, she had learned to read Hannah's expressions well, and this particular combination of professionalism and amusement usually meant something unexpected had happened. "Please tell me we don't have another hat controversy," Catherine said with a laugh, referring to a recent incident where fashion writers had spent an entire week debating the symbolic meaning of her choice to wear a beret to a veterans event. "Not quite," Hannah replied, setting the newspapers on the table and opening her tablet. "It appears that your husband's Christmas tree comparison has captured rather a lot of attention." Catherine nearly choked on her tea. "I'm sorry, what?" Hannah turned the tablet around to show Catherine the Twitter trending topics. There, nestled between discussions about football transfers and holiday shopping, was the hashtag Christmas Tree Kate, which had been mentioned over 50,000 times since the previous evening. "It seems," Hannah continued, clearly enjoying herself now, "that several guests at last night's event shared the story on social media. The photographer's image of you both laughing by the tree has been retweeted thousands of times, and the comments are, well, they're overwhelmingly positive." Catherine scrolled through the social media posts, her eyes widening with each swipe. There were countless photos from the event taken by guests, many showing her and William in their moment of shared laughter. But more than that, there were thousands of comments from people expressing delight at seeing the royal couple acting like, as one user put it, actual humans who joke around with each other. One tweet from @RoyalWatcher23 read, "Finally, a royal moment that feels completely genuine. The prince comparing Kate to a Christmas tree and her laughing so hard she nearly cried. This is the monarchy I can get behind." Hashtag Christmas Tree Kate. Another from @ModernMummy47 said, "My husband makes terrible jokes too, and I react exactly like Kate did. It's so refreshing to see that even future queens have to put up with their husband's dad humor." Hashtag Relatable Royals. "This is extraordinary," Catherine murmured, continuing to scroll through the endless stream of comments and shared photos. "People are actually talking about us like we're normal." "There's more," Hannah said, pulling up a news article on her tablet. The BBC has picked up the story for their morning show, and they're calling it a Christmas moment that shows the human side of royalty. ITV is running a segment about how social media is changing public perception of the royal family. Catherine set down her cup and leaned back in her chair, trying to process what she was seeing. In her years as a working royal, she had become accustomed to intense media scrutiny, carefully managed public appearances, and the constant awareness that every word and gesture would be analyzed and interpreted. But this felt different. This felt like people were celebrating something spontaneous and real. Her phone buzzed with a text message from William, who was already at his office dealing with his morning schedule of meetings about the Duchy of Cornwall. "Have you seen Twitter this morning? Apparently you're the most famous Christmas tree in Britain." Before she could respond, another message arrived. "The children are going to find this hilarious when they get home from school." Catherine smiled, thinking about how Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis would react to discovering that their mother had become a trending topic because their father had compared her to garden foliage. Charlotte, in particular, would probably insist on reenacting the entire scene during their family dinner. Hannah was still monitoring the social media response, her expression growing more amazed by the minute. "Your Royal Highness, I've never seen anything like this." The engagement metrics are through the roof, but more importantly, the sentiment analysis is overwhelmingly positive. People aren't just sharing the story. They're sharing their own stories about their relationships and family moments. Indeed, the hashtag had evolved beyond just discussing the royal couple. Thousands of people were now sharing photos and stories of their own partner's terrible jokes, their own Christmas preparations, and their own moments of unexpected laughter during holiday celebrations. The Christmas tree comparison had somehow become a catalyst for a much larger conversation about finding joy in simple moments and the importance of humor in relationships. Dr. Sarah Chun, a social media researcher at Oxford University, would later analyze this phenomenon for her research on viral content and authentic communication. "What made the Christmas tree moments so powerful," she would write in her subsequent paper, was not just that it showed the royals being spontaneous, but that it gave ordinary people permission to celebrate their own ordinary moments of happiness. Meanwhile, at his office in St. James's Palace, William was experiencing his own version of the morning surprises. His private secretary, Jean-Christophe Gray, had arrived for their daily briefing, carrying a similar collection of newspapers and wearing an expression that William had learned to interpret as, "You're not going to believe this." "Sir," Jean-Christophe began, settling into the chair across from William's desk, "I think we need to discuss last night's tree lighting ceremony." "Was there a problem with the event?" William asked, immediately concerned. "Everything seemed to go smoothly from where I was standing." "Oh, there was no problem at all," Jean-Christophe replied, opening his laptop. "Quite the opposite, actually. It appears that your Christmas tree comparison has made you and the princess rather famous on the internet." William listened in growing amazement as his secretary explained the social media response, showed him the trending hashtags, and outlined the overwhelmingly positive media coverage. As someone who had grown up in the spotlight and learned to be cautious about public reactions to royal behavior, this level of enthusiasm for something so simple and spontaneous felt almost surreal. "People are saying it's the most human moment they've ever seen from the royal family," Jean-Christophe continued. "The BBC wants to interview royal commentators about what this means for public perception of the monarchy. Several mental health charities have reached out to ask if you and the princess might consider doing more events that highlight the importance of humor and lightness in relationships." William sat back in his chair, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that had become more frequent as his hairline continued its retreat, much to Catherine's continued amusement. "All of this because I compare my wife to a tree." "All of this because you compared your wife to a tree," and she laughed like she genuinely found it funny. Jean-Christophe corrected gently. "There's a difference, sir. People aren't just responding to the joke itself. They're responding to the obvious affection and comfort between you and the princess." Indeed, that comfort and affection was exactly what had made the moment so compelling to observers. In an age where celebrity couples were often seen as strategic partnerships or publicity arrangements, seeing two people who clearly still enjoyed each other's company after more than a decade of marriage felt revolutionary. The response wasn't limited to social media, either. By mid-morning, Buckingham Palace had received over 200 emails from members of the public, all commenting positively on the Christmas tree moment. Many of the letters included personal stories about the importance of laughter in their own relationships, with several elderly couples sharing memories of jokes that had sustained them through decades of marriage. Mrs. Margaret Thornton, an 86-year-old widow from Yorkshire, had written, "Your Royal Highnesses, seeing you laugh together like that reminded me of my late husband Harold. He used to compare me to all sorts of ridiculous things, a fire hydrant when I wore my red coat, a lamppost when I stood very straight, and I would laugh every single time. That's what real love looks like, and it made my heart warm to see it in your faces." Similar sentiments were echoed across hundreds of messages, each one reinforcing the same theme. Authenticity in relationships was something people craved and celebrated, even when it came from the most rarefied circles of society. The morning's developments reached their peak when Buckingham Palace's communication team called for an emergency meeting. This wasn't the kind of emergency they usually dealt with, no scandal to manage, no crisis to contain, but rather the unusual challenge of managing overwhelmingly positive attention for something that hadn't been planned or strategized. "The question," said Palace Communications Secretary Rebecca Deacon during a hastily arranged conference call between the various royal offices, "is how we respond to this level of positive engagement. Do we lean into it? Do we maintain our usual approach of not commenting on personal moments? Or do we find some middle ground?" It was a delicate balance. The royal family had spent decades learning to manage their public image carefully, understanding that spontaneous moments could just as easily backfire as succeed. But the Christmas tree incident seemed to represent exactly the kind of authentic, relatable content that communications experts have been saying the monarchy needed to embrace. As the morning progressed, and the social media response continued to grow, it became clear that this wasn't just a momentary blip of positive attention. People were genuinely connecting with the image of William and Catherine as a real couple who enjoyed each other's company, and that connection was translating into broader positive feelings about the royal family as a whole. The hashtag Christmas Tree Kate was joined by hashtag Relatable Royals and hashtag Authentic Monarchy, with people sharing not just the original story, but their own reflections on what they wanted to see from their royal family. Many comments emphasized that seeing the royals as real people with real relationships made them feel more connected to the institution of monarchy itself. By lunchtime, what had started as a simple joke between a husband and wife had become a cultural moment, sparking conversations about authenticity, relationships, and the evolving role of the British royal family in the 21st century. And this was just the beginning. By early afternoon, the story had crossed the Atlantic and begun its journey around the world. In New York, where it was still morning show hosts on NBC's Today Show were discussing the Christmas tree moment during their entertainment segment, with co-host Hoda Kotb declaring, "This is exactly why people love them. They're just like us, well, except for the whole living in a palace thing." The international response proved even more enthusiastic than the British reaction. In countries where the British royal family held less political significance, but enormous cultural influence, people felt free to celebrate the simple joy of the moment without any of the complicated feelings about monarchy that sometimes surfaced in domestic coverage. Australian morning television picked up the story within hours, with hosts on Channel 7's Sunrise program inviting relationship experts to discuss what the interaction revealed about William and Catherine's marriage. Dr. Amanda Ross, a couples therapist from Sydney, observed, "What we're seeing here is a couple who still delight in each other after more than a decade together. That shared laughter, the way they both committed to the joke. These are markers of a relationship that's maintained its playfulness and intimacy despite enormous external pressures." In Canada, CBC's coverage focused on the broader implications for the monarchy's future, with royal correspondent Patricia Treble noting, "This spontaneous moment has done more for the royal family's image than months of carefully planned engagements. It shows William and Catherine as the kind of future monarchs who can connect with people on a human level." The story reached Asia by evening London time, where it found particularly enthusiastic reception in Japan, where the concept of finding extraordinary meaning in ordinary moments resonated deeply with cultural values. Japanese Twitter users began sharing the story alongside their own winter illumination photos, creating a beautiful visual narrative that connected royal Christmas decorations with traditional Japanese seasonal celebrations. Back in London, the communications teams at all the royal households were working overtime to understand and manage this unprecedented wave of positive attention. The challenge wasn't damage control, quite the opposite. It was figuring out how to nurture and build upon genuine public enthusiasm without compromising the authenticity that had made the moment special in the first place. Rebecca Deacon found herself in the unusual position of managing success rather than crisis. "The metrics are extraordinary," she reported during an afternoon video conference with senior royal communications staff. "We're seeing engagement rates that are typically associated with major announcements, births, weddings, significant charitable initiatives. But this is all organic response to a single spontaneous moment." The numbers were indeed remarkable. The original photograph of William and Catherine laughing by the Christmas tree had been shared over 100,000 times across various social media platforms. News outlets in 17 countries had picked up the story, and the hashtag Christmas Tree Kate was trending in 4 languages. More significantly, the story was driving traffic to official royal websites and social media accounts at unprecedented rates. People who had never followed royal news were suddenly engaging with content about William and Catherine's charitable work, their environmental initiatives, and their broader role in British society. "It's a perfect example of what communications experts call halo effect," explained Dr. Michael Harrison, a public relations professor at King's College London who had been following the story's development. "One positive, authentic moment is casting favorable light on everything else the royal family does. People who connected emotionally with the Christmas tree joke are now more inclined to view other royal activities positively." This was exactly the kind of organic public engagement that royal communication strategists had been trying to achieve for years. Previous attempts to show the human side of royalty had often felt forced or calculated, but the Christmas tree moment had emerged naturally from a genuine interaction between a married couple. Meanwhile, Catherine was experiencing her own version of the afternoon's developments during a visit to a local children's hospital that had been scheduled weeks in advance. What should have been a routine royal engagement focused on the hospital's new pediatric wing had instead become an impromptu celebration of the Christmas tree story. The first sign that this wouldn't be an ordinary hospital visit came when Catherine arrived and noticed that several staff members were wearing small Christmas tree pins on their uniforms. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the hospital's chief pediatrician, explained with obvious delight. The nursing staff bought them this morning after hearing about last night. They thought you might enjoy the tribute. Catherine laughed, the same genuine, uninhibited laugh that had started the whole phenomenon. I'm never going to live this down, am I? We certainly hope not, replied Nurse Janet Coleman, who had worked at the hospital for 23 years and had never felt comfortable speaking so freely to a member of the royal family before. It's lovely to see you both so happy together. These children need to see that kind of joy. Indeed, the children in the hospital seemed particularly delighted by the Christmas tree story. 8-year-old Emma Watson, no relation to the actress, who was recovering from surgery, told Catherine, "My daddy makes silly jokes too, and Mummy always laughs even when they're not funny. That's how I know they love each other." The innocence and wisdom of that observation struck Catherine powerfully. Here was a child who understood intuitively what millions of adults around the world were responding to. That laughter between partners was a sign of genuine affection and security. As Catherine moved through the hospital wards, she found herself discussing not just the children's health and the hospital's excellent care, but also the importance of maintaining joy and humor even during difficult times. The Christmas tree story had somehow given her permission to be more openly warm and personal in her interactions. "Your Royal Highness," said Margaret Stevens, whose 5-year-old son was being treated for leukemia, "seeing you and the prince laughing together like that, it reminded me that it's okay to find moments of happiness even when things are scary. We've been so focused on being brave that we forgot it's okay to be silly sometimes too." This conversation would stay with Catherine for the rest of the day. She realized that their moment of spontaneous humor had given other people permission to find lightness in their own lives, to celebrate simple joys without feeling guilty or frivolous. The hospital visit, which normally would have generated modest local media coverage, instead became part of the larger Christmas tree narrative. Photos of Catherine laughing with children while wearing a small Christmas tree pin, gifted by the hospital staff, appeared in newspapers around the world, reinforcing the message that this was a princess who could connect authentically with people from all walks of life. By evening, the story had taken on dimensions that no one could have predicted. Mental health charities were reporting increased engagement with their content about the importance of humor and play in relationships. Marriage counselors were sharing the story as an example of how couples could maintain connection through simple, playful interactions. The Relate charity, which provides relationship counseling across the UK, issued a statement saying, "The Prince and Princess of Wales have inadvertently highlighted something we see every day in our work, that couples who can laugh together, who can be silly and spontaneous with each other, tend to have stronger, more resilient relationships." Educational experts joined the conversation as well. Dr. Peter Fonagy, head of the Anna Freud Center, observed, "Children learn about healthy relationships by watching the adults around them. When young people see the future king and queen interacting with such obvious affection and playfulness, it sets a positive example for what love and partnership can look like." The story was also resonating within royal circles themselves. Princess, and known for her dry wit and practical approach to royal duties, sent a text message to William that simply read, "About time you two showed some personality at these events. Your grandmother would have found the whole thing hilarious." This reference to Queen Elizabeth II, who had died the previous year, carried particular weight. The late queen had been beloved partly for her own sense of humor and her ability to find joy in unexpected moments. But the formal nature of royal protocol had often prevented the public from seeing this side of her personality. The Christmas tree moment seemed to represent a new approach to royal engagement, one that honored tradition while embracing authenticity. It suggested that William and Catherine understood they could maintain dignity and respect while also being recognizably human. As the day drew to a close, palace staff began compiling reports on the unprecedented response to what had started as a simple joke. The numbers were staggering. Millions of social media engagements, hundreds of positive news stories, thousands of personal messages from members of the public, and a measurable increase in positive sentiment toward the monarchy across multiple demographic groups. But perhaps more importantly, the Christmas tree story had started conversations about authenticity, relationships, and finding joy in simple moments that extended far beyond discussion of the royal family. It had become a cultural touchstone for the idea that genuine human connection was something to be celebrated and preserved. As Catherine and William sat down for dinner that evening with their 3 children, who had indeed found the entire Christmas tree story absolutely hilarious, they began to understand that their moment of spontaneous humor had touched something deeper in the public consciousness than either of them had imagined possible. The question now was how to build upon this unexpected success without losing the authenticity that had made it so powerful in the first place. They had no way of knowing that this question would soon become central to discussions about the future of the monarchy itself. The Wales family dinner that evening was unlike any they had experienced in recent memory. As soon as 10-year-old Prince George, 8-year-old Princess Charlotte, and 5-year-old Prince Louis had finished their homework and washed their hands, they practically bounced into the dining room of their Kensington Palace apartment, bubbling with excitement about what they had learned during their day at school. "Papa," Charlotte announced as she climbed into her chair, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Everyone at school knows you called Mama a Christmas tree." William nearly choked on his water, while Catherine burst into laughter. They had known this conversation was inevitable, but experiencing it was another matter entirely. "My teacher, Miss Henderson, said it was in the newspaper," George added, trying to maintain the serious demeanor he thought befitted his position as future king, but failing to hide his obvious amusement. "She said lots of people thought it was very nice that you two still joke around together." Little Louis, not to be outdone by his older siblings, piped up with 5-year-old logic. "Can I call Mama a Christmas tree too? She does look like one when she wears her green dress." Catherine reached over to ruffle her youngest son's hair. "You can call me whatever you like, my love, but perhaps we should think of some other comparisons too." "Like what?" Charlotte asked, already plotting. "Well," William said, settling into what his family recognized as his storytelling voice, "sometimes your mama reminds me of a beautiful swan, graceful and elegant as she glides through her royal duties." "Boring," Louis declared, eliciting shocked gasps from his siblings at his breach of dinner-table etiquette. "All right then," William continued, grinning at his youngest son's honesty. "Sometimes she's like a lioness, fierce and protective when someone threatens her cubs." "That's better," Louis nodded approvingly. Charlotte, ever the diplomat even at 8 years old, raised her hand as if she were in school. "But, Papa, why did everyone get so excited about you comparing Mama to a tree? You say silly things about her all the time." This observation stopped both parents cold. Charlotte was absolutely right. Their home was filled with playful banter, gentle teasing, and the kind of comfortable silliness that develops between people who know each other intimately. William regularly compared Catherine to everything from a tornado when she was reorganizing closets to a detective when she was trying to figure out which child had left muddy footprints in the hallway. "I think," Catherine said slowly, considering her words carefully, "it's because people don't usually see Mama and Papa being silly together in public. We try to be very proper when we're working." "But why?" George asked, his young mind struggling with the concept of changing personality based on location. "You're still the same people whether you're here or at work." William and Catherine exchanged glances across the table, both recognizing the profound wisdom in their eldest son's question. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. "You're absolutely right, George," William said finally. "We're the same people. I think maybe we've been too worried about what people might think if we acted naturally in public." "Well, they liked it this time," Charlotte pointed out with 8-year-old pragmatism. "Maybe you should be more natural more often." This dinner conversation would later be cited by Catherine as a turning point in how she approached her royal duties. Her children, unencumbered by years of protocol training and media scrutiny, had identified something that communications experts and royal commentators have been discussing for months: the public's hunger for authenticity from their royal family. The children's perspective proved particularly insightful because they had grown up in an era where social media made public figures more accessible and relatable than ever before. To them, The idea that their parents should hide their personalities during work events seemed not just unnecessary, but counterproductive. At school, George continued, warming to his theme. When Mr. Davies tries to be too serious all the time, no one likes his class. But when he jokes around and acts like himself, everyone pays attention and learns better. That's very observant, Catherine said, making a mental note to remember this insight for future engagements. What else do you think about Mama and Papa's work? Charlotte immediately raised her hand again. I think people like seeing that you love each other because lots of children have parents who don't seem happy together. When you're happy, it makes them feel better about families. This comment hit both William and Catherine with unexpected force. They had always understood their roles as representatives of the monarchy and the Commonwealth, but they hadn't fully considered how their relationship might serve as a model for family stability in an era when many children experience divorce, conflict, or family breakdown. You know what I heard today? George said, reaching for another dinner roll. Mrs. Patterson in the school office was talking to another teacher, and she said that seeing you two laugh together reminded her why she fell in love with Mr. Patterson 30 years ago. William raised his eyebrows. Mrs. Patterson said that. Well, she didn't know I was listening, George admitted sheepishly. But she said it made her want to go home and tell Mr. Patterson a joke instead of complaining about the broken dishwasher. Louis, who had been quietly working on his vegetables, suddenly looked up with excitement. Can we tell jokes at dinner every night? Like you did at the Christmas tree? We always tell jokes at dinner, Catherine pointed out gently. I know, but can we tell the kind that make everyone else happy too? Louis clarified with 5-year-old earnestness. This question sparked a 20-minute family discussion about the difference between private family time and public royal duties, but also about how the two might not need to be as separate as they had always assumed. The children's natural assumption was that happiness should be shared, not hidden, and their parents found themselves reconsidering long-held assumptions about royal protocol. After dinner, as the children settled in for their evening routine, William and Catherine found themselves in the unusual position of debriefing a royal engagement with their offspring. Normally, work stayed at work, and family time remained separate from their public duties. But the Christmas tree moment had blurred those boundaries in ways that felt surprisingly natural. You know, Catherine said as she tucked Charlotte into bed, you made some very wise observations at dinner tonight. Charlotte snuggled deeper into her covers. Her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched her chest. Mama, can I ask you something? Of course, darling. Are you and Papa really happier when you act more like yourselves at work? Catherine paused, considering the question seriously. I think you might be. What made you think of that? Well, Charlotte said thoughtfully, when I have to give presentations at school, I'm always really nervous when I try to act like someone else. But when I just act like me, it feels easier and more fun. That's very wise, Catherine said, kissing her daughter's forehead. Maybe Mama and Papa can learn something from that. Down the hall, William was having a similar conversation with George as they looked through the news coverage on William's tablet. The photos from the Christmas tree lighting showed the exact moment when William had made his comparison, capturing Catherine's expression of delighted surprise, and then her burst of genuine laughter. You both look really happy in these pictures, George observed. Happier than in some of the other work pictures. William studied the images more carefully, seeing them through his son's eyes. George was right. There was something different about these photos, lightness and authenticity that was often missing from more formal royal portraits. What do you think makes the difference? William asked his eldest son. George considered this carefully. I think it's because you forgot you were working and just remembered you were married. The simplicity and accuracy of this observation took William's breath away. His 10-year-old son had identified exactly what had made the Christmas tree moment so compelling. It was a genuine interaction between a husband and wife who had momentarily forgotten about their public roles and simply enjoyed each other's company. George, William said slowly, I think you might be the wisest person in this family. I know, George replied matter-of-factly, then grinned to show he was joking. But Charlotte is pretty smart too, and Louis always knows when people are being fake. This comment about Louis's ability to detect authenticity proved particularly prophetic. Over the following weeks, the youngest Wales child would become something of a barometer for his parents' public interactions, often commenting afterward on whether they had seemed real or work why during various engagements. As William said goodnight to Louis, the 5-year-old made one final observation that would stick with his father for months to come. "Papa, when you called Mama a Christmas tree, you looked at her the same way you look at us when we do something that makes you proud." That's why everyone liked it. Later that evening, after all 3 children were asleep, William and Catherine sat in their private sitting room, sharing a cup of tea and reflecting on their family's unexpected wisdom about authenticity, relationships, and the public role of the monarchy. "They see things we miss," Catherine said softly. "We become so accustomed to code switching between our private and public selves that we hadn't noticed how artificial it might appear, or how much more effective we might be if we allowed more of our real relationship to show through our work," William added. Not inappropriately, but genuinely. They had no way of knowing that this conversation, sparked by their children's observations about the Christmas tree moment, was laying the groundwork for what royal historians would later describe as a fundamental shift in how the House of Windsor approached public engagement in the modern era. The children had done more than just comment on a funny moment between their parents. They had identified a path forward for the monarchy that honored both tradition and authenticity, and their insights would prove instrumental in shaping how William and Catherine approached their royal duties in the years to come. 3 months after the Christmas tree moment, its impact continued to reverberate through every aspect of royal life in ways that no one could have predicted. What had begun as a simple joke between a husband and wife had fundamentally altered how the British royal family approached public engagement, media relations, and their connection with people around the world. The most immediate change was visible in the atmosphere of royal events themselves. Where once there had been a careful formality that kept genuine emotion at arm's length, William and Catherine began allowing more of their authentic selves to show through their public interactions. This shift was subtle, but unmistakable to those who worked closely with the royal family. Maria Santos, a longtime palace photographer, noticed the change during a visit to a youth charity in Manchester. "The prince and princess always cared deeply about their work," she explained to a colleague, "but now they seem more willing to let that care show naturally. There's less concern about maintaining a perfect royal facade and more focus on genuine connection." This observation proved accurate during that Manchester visit, where Catherine found herself sitting on the floor with a group of teenagers discussing mental health challenges. When one young man, James Parker, made a self-deprecating joke about his anxiety, Catherine laughed genuinely and shared that she too sometimes felt nervous before big speeches. "Really?" James asked, his surprise evident. "But you're like a princess. I thought you'd be good at everything." "Being nervous doesn't mean you can't be good at something," Catherine replied with a warm smile. "It just means you care about doing it well." This kind of authentic exchange, which might have felt too informal or risky before the Christmas tree moment, now felt natural and appropriate. The young people at the charity later told staff that it was the first time they had felt like they were talking to a real person rather than a royal character. The ripple effects extended far beyond individual engagements. Palace communications teams began receiving requests from organizations around the world asking William and Catherine to participate in initiatives focused on authentic relationships, family wellness, and finding joy in everyday moments. The Global Family Foundation, an international organization supporting family stability, invited the couple to become patron and patroness specifically because of what the Christmas tree moment had represented. They've shown that strong relationships require both dignity and playfulness, explained Dr. Jennifer Martinez, the foundation's director. That balance is exactly what families around the world need to see modeled. The invitation led to a series of engagements throughout the spring where William and Catherine visited families facing various challenges. Military families dealing with deployment, families affected by illness, families navigating financial hardship, and consistently demonstrated that maintaining connection and finding moments of lightness wasn't frivolous but essential. At a support center for families dealing with childhood cancer, Catherine sat with Sandra Williams, whose 6-year-old daughter was undergoing treatment. When the little girl, Emma, showed Catherine a drawing she had made of her family as different trees in a forest, Catherine immediately understood the reference. "Am I the Christmas tree in your forest?" Catherine asked with a grin. Emma giggled and pointed to a tall evergreen in her drawing. "That's you." and my mummy is the apple tree because she takes care of everyone, and Daddy is the oak tree because he's really strong. Sandra Williams later said that seeing Catherine engage so naturally with her daughter's imagination, without any concern for dignity or protocol, had given her family permission to find their own moments of silliness during a very difficult time. The academic community also began studying the Christmas tree phenomenon as an example of authentic communication in the digital age. Dr. Elizabeth Thompson at the London School of Economics published a paper titled The Christmas Tree Moment: Authenticity and Authority in Modern Monarchy, that analyzed how the incident had changed public perception of the royal family. What we witnessed, Dr. Thompson wrote, was a perfect storm of authentic emotion, social media amplification, and public hunger for genuine human connection from their institutions. The moment succeeded because it was spontaneous, relatable, and revealed something true about the people involved. Her research showed that positive sentiment toward the monarchy had increased by 18% following the Christmas tree moment, with the largest gains among younger demographics who had previously felt disconnected from royal traditions. More importantly, this increased positive feeling had translated into greater engagement with the charitable causes supported by William and Catherine. The international impact proved equally significant. Commonwealth countries reported increased interest in royal visits, with several nations specifically requesting appearances focused on family relationships and community connection. The Canadian government invited William and Catherine to participate in a national conversation about work-life balance, while Australia asked them to support initiatives promoting positive relationship models for young people. Perhaps most meaningfully, other members of the royal family began incorporating lessons from the Christmas tree moment into their own public engagements. Princess, and already known for her directness and wit, began allowing more of her dry humor to show during public appearances. King Charles, initially skeptical of what he privately called the informality trend, found that acknowledging his own quirks and passions more openly during engagements led to warmer public reception. The changes weren't limited to public appearances. Internal palace culture began shifting as well, with staff reporting that the atmosphere at royal residences felt more relaxed and collaborative. The Christmas tree moment had demonstrated that authenticity and respect could coexist, leading to more open communication throughout the royal household. Hannah Cockburn, Catherine's private secretary, noted the change during a staff meeting in April. "The princess has always been wonderful to work with," she told her team, "but since December, there's been this sense that we're all working together as real people rather than as roles. It's made everything more efficient and more enjoyable." This cultural shift had practical implications for royal operations. Planning meetings became more collaborative, with staff feeling empowered to suggest creative approaches to engagements. The rigid protocols that had once governed every aspect of royal appearances began giving way to more flexible frameworks that prioritized authentic connection over perfect execution. The most significant long-term impact, however, was on how William and Catherine approached their preparation for eventually becoming king and queen. The Christmas tree moment had shown them that the public didn't want perfect, untouchable monarchs. They wanted leaders who could connect with real human experiences while maintaining the dignity and stability that the monarchy represented. This realization led to a series of private discussions with constitutional experts, historians, and public communication specialists about how to modernize the monarchy without losing its essential character. The Christmas tree moment became a touchstone for these conversations, an example of how tradition and authenticity could reinforce rather than contradict each other. 6 months after that December evening at Kensington Palace, William and Catherine hosted another Christmas tree lighting ceremony. This time, the event was deliberately designed to capture both the formality appropriate to royal tradition and the warmth that had made the original moment so compelling. As they stood beside the magnificently decorated tree, surrounded by guests from charities they supported, local community leaders, and palace staff, William looked at his wife and smiled. Catherine, wearing a different green dress, but radiating the same natural warmth, smiled back. "No tree comparisons this year?" she whispered teasingly. "I was thinking you look more like a beautiful winter garden tonight," William whispered back, causing Catherine to laugh with the same genuine delight that had started everything. This time, The moment was captured deliberately, shared widely, and celebrated as evidence that the royal family had found a way to be both authentic and appropriate. The Christmas tree moment hadn't been a fluke. It had been a glimpse of the future of the monarchy. As the evening wound down and guests shared their reflections on the year, many commented on how the royal family seemed more approachable and relatable without having lost any of their dignity or gravitas. The Christmas tree comparison had become a symbol of possibility, proof that institutions could evolve and modernize while honoring their fundamental purpose. Young Emma Watson, the same child who had been recovering in a hospital during Catherine's visit the previous year, attended the second tree lighting ceremony as a special guest. When she met Catherine again, she presented her with a small ornament she had made, a tiny Christmas tree with a crown on top. "This is you," Emma explained seriously, "because you showed me that even princesses can be silly, and that makes them better at their job, not worse." Catherine hung the ornament on the tree herself, understanding that this simple gift represented something profound about how her role and her authenticity could work together rather than in opposition. As William and Catherine walked back to their private quarters that evening, past the Christmas tree that sparkled with both traditional ornaments and new additions like Emma's crown tree, they reflected on how much had changed since that spontaneous moment of marital playfulness 12 months earlier. "Do you think we've learned the lesson?" Catherine asked her husband as they paused to look back at the tree one more time. "I think," William replied, putting his arm around her shoulders, "we've learned that the best lessons often come in the form of terrible jokes about Christmas trees." They both laughed, and somewhere in Kensington Palace, their 3 children, who had taught them as much as anyone about the importance of authenticity, were probably laughing too, understanding instinctively what their parents had taken months to fully grasp. Being real doesn't make you less royal, it makes you more human. And in the 21st century, that humanity is exactly what the world needs from its leaders. The Christmas tree moment had ended, but its legacy would influence the British royal family for generations to come, proving that sometimes the most powerful changes begin not with grand gestures or strategic planning, but with 2 people who love each other sharing a laugh beside a Christmas tree.